So The Watchers was written and directed by Ashana Knight Shyamalan. She's the daughter of director M. Night Shyamalan, and it stars Dakota Fanning as this woman who gets lost in the woods and encounters a group of people who are trapped in the woods, trapped into this bunker-like thing, and they're being watched by these creatures known as the Watchers. They can't see the Watchers, but the Watchers can see the humans. And what they want, what are they looking for, we won't know until we see the movie. So this is a movie I was only really interested in because M. Night Shyamalan's daughter was directing, and I was kind of curious to see, like, how her directing style was going to be compared to someone like M. Night Shyamalan style. The trailers themselves looked alrightish. Like, the trailers didn't really scare me that much. They looked okay. I was like, yeah, I'll still check that out when it comes out. And if you're wondering, like, which era of M. Night Shyamalan this movie would belong in, like, would it be in the era of Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, where it's like he makes really good movies, or in that era where he makes really bad movies like Lady in the Water and The Happening and such, or where he's kind of like hit or miss with movies like Visit and Split, and it's like sometimes he's really good, sometimes he's really bad. It's somewhere between those last two, somewhere between The Village and Now, where it's like this definitely would have been an M. Night Shyamalan movie in that era, because there are times where this movie is like actually kind of fascinating, but then there are times where this movie is really enjoyably bad. Like this movie, I honestly wanted to laugh a few times while watching it, but I didn't because there were other people in the theater watching this, and I didn't want to, offend them and such. But this is a movie that, yeah, this is not great. So I'll start off with the things I do like. First off, I do think Dakota Fanning does a really good job in the movie. I actually believed her character a lot. I think she does a lot of like really good things in this movie. I thought she was fantastic. I wouldn't say fantastic, but like she's the best actress in this movie. And I think of all the actors who are in this movie, I think she does the best job. Meanwhile, I would argue this is an incredibly well shot movie. This is a gorgeous looking movie from like, the inside versus the outside, like how that looks in comparison. There are a lot of mirror shots, which I thought were very fascinating and kind of like plays into some of the themes of the movie, which I won't dive into because that would be a little spoilerish. Also, the score I thought was really well done. Kind of definitely feels very old schoolish, very creepy as well. And speaking of old school, it's really nice to see the old New Line Cinema logo on the big screen again. It's like, that is really cool. That is really nice. And I do think there are some themes and some ideas that are very interesting. Like, there are some themes about, regret, about losing yourself, losing your mind in such a way, which I do think are very fascinating. And I do think there are interesting ways that this movie kind of shows that. And I do think there are some, like, ideas, like, with the Watchers themselves, like, when we finally get to see them and what they're like, it's like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I kind of want to see more of this, and I kind of want to see what else they're like, how they behave and such. That's actually kind of interesting. And I do think that for the most part, its one location setting is very fascinating. Where it's like M. Night Shyamalan has been doing a lot of movies recently, where it's like most of the movies are kind of set in one location, like The Visit, Old, Knock the Cabin, Split and such. And I do think it's definitely one of those movies where, you know, Ashana Night Shyamalan is definitely trying to follow in her dad's footsteps in some ways, but there are unfortunately a lot of ways that she also follows in his footsteps, and that's with some of the things that kind of just are explained in this movie. It's at times it's like, yeah, you can definitely see that Shyamalan directed this movie, and it was just. I'll get into that. First off, I'll start off with the jump scares themselves. It's honestly not even that scary, if I'm being honest. It's not even really that creepy. There are a few jump scares in this movie. They're just loud noises, and they're not really that scary. It's like, oh, birds, and it's like, well, I don't feel scared anymore. Why am I scared by a bird? I'm not really scared by that. They were pretty weak. I was not scared by this movie. I was not intimidated by this movie. Even the monsters themselves, which looked pretty creepy, I was never really on the edge of my seat. And honestly, my biggest issue is that this movie can be hilarious at times. Like, there's some ways that are like, characters say stuff, and it's like, okay, this is clearly a Shyamalan movie. It's kind of funny how they do it. But then there's like these really dumb moments that these characters do. Like, I try not to complain about like how dumb characters are in movies and such, because like, especially in horror, you got to have dumb characters in there. This movie has some of the dumbest characters in a while, and that says a lot. Like, there's a moment halfway through the movie where they have to make a really difficult choice, and it winds up backfiring in a lot of ways. But then something later happens, and it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Again, it would be kind of spoilerish, but one of the main characters asks if something is real or not, and I'm like, how, like, how stupid are you? How stupid are these characters? Incredibly stupid. Also, not to mention that sometimes the dialogue is not like, you don't actually see some of the characters say their dialogue. It's kind of like off screen sometimes, so it's like, It's kind of horrible ADR. It's like, did they hire the people from Madame Web to do this movie to do the ADR? I don't understand it. Sometimes the actors kind of like are a little ridiculous. Like the main male character, I thought he was a little ridiculous at times. The actress who's like the kind of the person who's been there the longest, and also kind of just the guide for like all this. I thought her character was awful, and she has a lot of hypocritical moments in this movie where, like at one point, she kind of tells everyone, "It's like you should not do this," and I'm like, "Didn't you do this like a half hour ago?" It really makes no sense. And also, there is so much exposition in this movie that it was just annoying. I would say about like, from the moment Dakota Fanning gets into the woods, it's all pretty much just exposition. And it's pretty much all exposition until like the last 20 minutes or so of this movie, where exposition is kind of just thrown out the window because they kind of just want to do whatever the hell they want. And it kind of just annoyed me. For a movie that like starts off, I wouldn't say starts off like, bad or anything. For a movie that kind of like made me laugh for a good chunk of the movie when it shouldn't have, it just made me angry for the last 20 minutes of this movie. And that's just kind of not good. At least for like a really bad movie, like a so bad it's good movie, it's like I should just be laughing all the way through. But this movie, I'm like, I'm laughing for a good chunk of it, but now I'm just angry, and that's not really good. And I think the pacing of this movie is a bit off too. This movie is only like a little over an hour and a half, and it feels much longer than that, particularly because there are multiple endings with this movie. Now, having looked into it after watching this movie, the endings are pretty close to what the book is like. If you have not read the book, I won't spoil it. But having not known that before going to the movie, it just felt like there was just so many endings with this movie. Like it was like Return of the King or something. It's like, okay, fine. It's over now. Oh, we're doing this scene now? Oh, I guess that kind of makes sense, I guess. Oh, there's another ending. Oh, okay, fine. Let's just end this already. No, there's another ending. And it just keeps going and going until a point where I'm just like, just stop already. Just wrap this up. It's over, please. But anyway, so because The Watchers does have a good performance by Dakota Fanning, it does have feature some good cinematography, some good themes, a good score, and some interesting ideas are sprinkled throughout the entire movie. I just did not really care for the jump scares. It was pretty hilarious at times, unintentionally, I feel like, even though it made me angry for the last 20 minutes because of the endings, the pacing, and the exposition's too much. The characters are either too hypocritical, too dumb, or too dubbed over. This is a movie that would have fit perfectly with M. Night Shyamalan's career when he was doing movies like The Village, Happening, and Lady in the Water. So I'll give The Watchers 1.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So, what was the last horror movie that made you laugh? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.